We now return to science, and specifically to the Second Scientific Revolution, which spanned the years from 1859 to 1914. Like the first scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries, it fundamentally transformed how people understood the world around them. However, the two revolutions had very different intellectual consequences. The first scientific revolution was largely reassuring. It increased confidence in human reason and suggested that the universe operated according to orderly, predictable laws that could be discovered and understood. By contrast, the second scientific revolution was far more unsettling. New scientific discoveries raised doubts about humanity's place in the universe and challenged long-held assumptions about religion, morality, and even human nature itself. Rather than providing certainty, science increasingly revealed a world that was more complex, uncertain, and difficult to comprehend than many had previously believed. By the late 19th century, people placed enormous faith in the power of science. The remarkable technological advances of the era seemed to demonstrate that human ingenuity had few limits. Scientific discoveries and innovations had brought electricity into homes and cities, connected distant places through railroads and telephones, revealed the hidden workings of the human body through X-rays, and introduced entirely new forms of entertainment, such as motion pictures. The development of the automobile further transformed daily life and transportation. Surrounded by these achievements, many people came to believe that science could solve virtually any problem and explain every aspect of the natural world. This widespread confidence helped make science one of the most influential forces shaping modern society. Among the fields most transformed during this era were biology, psychology, and physics, shaped by Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and Albert Einstein. We begin with Darwin. In 1859, Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species, one of the most influential scientific works in history, and presented his theory of biological evolution through natural selection. Darwin argued that all living organisms, both plants and animals, change gradually over long periods of time through small variations that are passed from one generation to the next. Contrary to traditional beliefs, species do not remain fixed and unchanging, nor do they evolve because they consciously choose to adapt. Instead, random variations occur naturally among individuals within a species. Some of these variations provide advantages that improve an organism's chances of surviving and reproducing, while less useful traits tend to disappear over time. As advantageous characteristics are passed on to future generations, species slowly change and adapt to their environments. This process, which Darwin described as natural selection, results in a constant struggle for existence in which organisms compete for limited resources, and those best suited to their surroundings are more likely to survive and reproduce. Over immense spans of time, this process can lead to the development of entirely new species. Darwin explained evolutionary change through a process he called natural selection, the idea that nature itself determines which organisms survive and reproduce, and which eventually disappear. Within every species, individuals vary in countless small ways. Because resources such as food, space, and mates are limited, organisms are engaged in a continual struggle for existence. Those individuals possessing traits that make them better adapted to their environment are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those advantageous characteristics on to their offspring. Over time, these successful traits become more common within the population, while less useful traits gradually disappear. This principle became widely known as survival of the fittest, a phrase coined by the British philosopher Herbert Spencer rather than Darwin himself. In this context, fitness did not necessarily mean physical strength. It referred to an organism's ability to adapt successfully to its environment and produce offspring. Darwin's theory challenged traditional religious and scientific views that species had been separately created and remained unchanged. As a result, On the Origin of Species sparked intense debate and controversy, fundamentally altering how people understood life, humanity, and the natural world. Darwin's theory of evolution created a sensation because its implications extended far beyond biology and challenged many beliefs that people had long accepted as unquestionable truths. One of the most controversial aspects of his work was its impact on religion. Many church leaders and religious believers rejected Darwin's ideas because the concept of evolution appeared to contradict the biblical account of creation found in the book of Genesis. If species evolved gradually over time through natural processes, then the traditional belief that God had created each species separately seemed to be called into question. Darwin's theory also suggested that human beings were part of the natural world and shared common ancestors with other living organisms, rather than occupying a unique and separate place in creation. To many people, this challenged humanity's special status and undermined the idea of a divinely ordered universe. As a result, critics argued that Darwin's explanation of life's development seemed to remove God from the story of life's origins, making his theory one of the most controversial scientific ideas of the 19th century. Another reason Darwin's theory unsettled many people was that it appeared to leave little room for traditional ideas of morality. Darwin's explanation of evolution focused on how organisms survive and reproduce, not on concepts such as good and evil, sin and virtue, or right and wrong. In the process of natural selection, the key distinction was not between the moral and the immoral, but between those organisms that were well adapted to their environment and those that were not. Traits survived because they promoted survival and reproduction, not because they were morally good. This implication troubled many observers. If success in nature depended primarily on fitness rather than morality, then human beings could no longer assume that the natural world rewarded virtue or punished wrongdoing. Some feared that cruelty, aggression, or selfish behavior might sometimes provide advantages in the struggle for existence, while cooperation, compassion, and self-sacrifice might place individuals at a disadvantage. Although Darwin himself did not argue that people should abandon moral values, critics worried that his theory weakened traditional moral foundations by suggesting that nature operated according to biological necessity rather than ethical principles. To many 19th century readers, the possibility that fitness rather than morality governed life was one of the most disturbing implications of evolutionary theory. Darwin's theory also transformed how people viewed the natural world itself. The first scientific revolution had encouraged the belief that nature was orderly, harmonious, and governed by elegant laws that reflected a rational universe. Many people saw the natural world as a balanced system in which every part fit together according to a divine plan. Darwin, however, presented a far less comforting picture. In his view, nature was characterized by constant competition as organisms struggled to obtain food, find mates, secure territory, and avoid predators. Survival was never guaranteed. It depended on an ongoing struggle in which only those best adapted to their environment were likely to succeed. As a result, even everyday scenes took on a different meaning. A walk through a forest, once viewed as peaceful and serene, could now be understood as a setting in which countless plants and animals were engaged in an unending contest for survival. Beneath the apparent beauty of nature lay a continuous process of competition, adaptation, and extinction. Darwin's universe was therefore not one of perfect harmony, but one shaped by conflict and change. To many 19th century observers, this vision of nature as a relentless struggle for existence was deeply unsettling and challenged long-held assumptions about the world and humanity's place within it. Although Darwin developed his theory to explain biological evolution in the natural world, he did not apply it directly to human societies, races, or nations. Nevertheless, a number of late 19th century thinkers attempted to extend Darwin's ideas beyond biology. These individuals became known as Social Darwinists. They argued that the principles of natural selection and survival of the fittest also governed human affairs. According to this view, some individuals, social classes, races, or nations were naturally more fit than others, while weaker groups were considered unfit. As a result, Social Darwinists claimed that inequality, competition, and the dominance of stronger groups over weaker ones were natural and inevitable. Social Darwinism was used to justify a wide range of social and political policies. Some supporters argued that governments should not interfere to help the poor, because doing so would protect those they viewed as less fit. Others used social Darwinist ideas to defend imperialism, claiming that powerful nations had the right, or even the duty, to dominate weaker peoples. These arguments also contributed to racist theories that ranked human groups according to supposed biological superiority. While social Darwinists often cited Darwin as an inspiration, their ideas went far beyond his scientific work and represented a controversial application of evolutionary concepts to human society. The popularity of social Darwinism demonstrates how scientific theories could be transformed into broader social and political ideologies during the late 19th century. Social Darwinists used a distorted version of Darwin's theory to argue that success and power were evidence of biological superiority. They claimed that because European nations had conquered and colonized large parts of Africa and Asia, white Europeans must be inherently more fit, while non-European peoples were supposedly less advanced or unfit. Similar arguments were applied within Europe, where powerful industrial nations such as Britain and Germany were portrayed as naturally superior to countries considered weaker or less developed. In the economic sphere, social Darwinists asserted that large and successful businesses deserved their dominance because competition had supposedly proven their superiority, while smaller or failing businesses were viewed as less fit competitors. These ideas were also applied to social classes and marginalized groups. Poverty was often interpreted not as the result of economic conditions, discrimination, or lack of opportunity, but as evidence of biological or personal inferiority. Social Darwinist thinking frequently reinforced existing prejudices, including racist and anti-Semitic beliefs. Jews, along with other groups that faced discrimination, were often falsely characterized as socially or biologically inferior. By presenting such prejudices as scientific facts, social Darwinists gave old stereotypes and inequalities a new appearance of legitimacy. Modern scholars reject these claims as pseudoscientific, noting that they misrepresented Darwin's biological theories and were used to justify racism, imperialism, economic inequality, and social discrimination. Some social Darwinists took their ideas to an even more troubling conclusion by arguing that war was the ultimate test of a nation's fitness. If competition and struggle determined success in nature, they reasoned, then conflict between nations served the same purpose in human affairs. According to this view, war revealed which peoples and nations were truly strong, disciplined, and capable, while exposing and eliminating those considered weak. Military victory was interpreted as evidence of superiority and defeat as proof of inferiority. This belief led many social Darwinists to see war not as a tragedy to be avoided, but as a natural and even beneficial force. They argued that conflict strengthened societies by rewarding courage, unity, sacrifice, and national power. Peace, by contrast, was sometimes criticized as promoting weakness and complacency. As international tensions increased in the years before 1914, these ideas helped create an intellectual climate in which some politicians, military leaders, and public commentators viewed war as both inevitable and desirable. When Europe moved toward war in the summer of 1914, supporters of social Darwinism often welcomed the coming conflict. Rather than seeing it as a catastrophic failure of diplomacy, they portrayed it as a necessary struggle that would determine which nations were most fit to survive and prosper in the modern world. The devastating human cost of World War I would soon reveal the dangers of such thinking. But before the outbreak of war, social Darwinist ideas helped many people justify and even celebrate the prospect of armed conflict.